Hello, 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 everyone. Hello, YouTubers. This is Anonymous T. Hope you're having an amazing day today. So today I'm reacting to the Love is Blind Season 2 reunion episode hosted by Nick and Vanessa Lachey. And I just have more questions than answers. You guys know, some of my summaries and things in terms of what actually took place this season. I've, been pretty transparent that Season 1 always gives you the most real and raw of these couples and things of that nature. And I just felt there were a lot of missteps in this reunion. There were a lot of questions that I felt were left unanswered. And so I just wanted to kind of give my take on everything that took place, as well as I felt where there were some gaps that could have used some follow-up questions or some follow-up information just to make everything a little bit more cohesive, because I felt things were very scattered. First and foremost, we have to talk about, Shake trying to steal the show. Now, there's going to be mixed reactions on this. I obviously do not condone his behavior and how he was treating, Deep and everything else. However, I felt there were certain moments that he was saying things that we wanted to hear as a viewing audience that I felt Nick and Vanessa missed the assignment on. And so I think, Shake understood from that perspective, since he was already considered a villain, that he was this was his last, contribution to the show, so he was going to go out with a bang. And there's people like that on reality TV who know their role. I also felt like Shayna was produced as well. She seemed very out of place in this whole process. I felt we still didn't really get any clear answers as far as, what took place between Shayna and Kyle. And deep down for me, to be completely honest with you, I honestly think that producers saw Shayna as somebody who was entertaining, was going to bring you the drama and this and that, and they knew that she still very much was into Shane and wanted to facilitate that drama as a possibility of, her breaking up or her being a factor in the breakup of Shane and Natalie. Because I never got the vibe she was fully into Kyle as much as it was she simply said yes for the simple fact that Shane and Natalie were pretty much, a done deal at that point, because she didn't open up to say her real feelings. So, and then I think the reason that she left so soon on the honeymoon, because I think she was probably anticipating seeing Shane immediately, to see whether or not there was an attraction there, to see whether or not there was something there to pursue. But probably when she realized that she had to stay in Mexico for a week or however long it is that they have to stay there for the honeymoons, she said, skip it and we'll, meet Shane at another date at a later time during the process, which is why we ended up seeing her again, when they had that mixer and, she randomly showed up and had that very long conversation with Shane. Again, another missed opportunity by the host to call out Shayna, to call out why she had an inappropriate conversation with Shane so long. And, Natalie's back there, watching intently, and everybody's trying to figure out, what's going on. They're, talking into the night. And, Shayna, in her own way, is basically saying she still has feelings for Shane and feels that they are a match. And she had the nerve to call Shane and Natalie fake and phony and everything else. And that got completely glossed over. The comment about if it doesn't work out between Natalie and Shane, that she's got a friend that she can hook Natalie up with, which caused an issue with Natalie and Shane. I felt a lot of the good stuff was left out. And part of the reason I felt a lot of the good stuff was left out is because it sounds like they filmed the reunion in the middle of the show airing, in the middle of social media reaction to certain things. So it's if the consensus is everybody, already doesn't like Shake and how he conducted himself, he's an easy target to go after. But as a result of that, I felt that a lot of other people's misdeeds were glossed over, except for the people who actually held themselves accountable in Jared and Mallory, which I will get to in a moment here. But I felt like the focus was too much on the Shake drama, and, and I hated how they produced those segments because they produced it in a way to still make it as though Deep is undesirable. Like, they kept hyping it up and hyping up, everything that Shake was doing and everything else, and less about Deep and her emotions and how she was able to cope with watching this and experiencing all of this and everything else. They just made it all about Shake, and they made it less about Deep, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all, because I felt it was like a cop-out. I felt that, Deep deserved the opportunity to really have a longer segment to speak her truth, to speak to her experience, to speak to certain red flags that she experienced throughout the process. In addition to, being told behind the scenes some of the stuff that Shake was saying about her, because we didn't know any of that. The edit portrayed it as though Deep was completely clueless in terms of how Shake was feeling about her, other than towards the end, it sounded as though, something happened or something clicked to where she realized, oh, this is not going to be a thing, this is not going to work, and, kept it moving and basically made it about the night that they did the spa date. But now we know from the reunion, she's known pretty much from the beginning how he felt. So it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like some areas of this reunion could have been better. Also, I felt Sal and Mal's, segment was a little vague. I don't understand what took place, why they didn't work out. They still felt good enough to still meet up afterwards to see if there was some potential there or what have you. However, they're being very coy, very vague on what actually was the issue. Was, the alleged ex-girlfriend the factor? Was Mallory talking to somebody else, on the side a factor? Like, what happened? Because there's all kinds of conspiracy theories out there, because we have no idea what they were even talking about in their segment. And it was very frustrating, because I'm like, well, what is this point of the reunion if we're not going to keep it a buck? And this is what I mean. This is why reunions should always film right before, social media like really takes off on certain things, or before we get to the climax of certain things on these shows, so that people can be a lot more honest and not feel like they can just hide behind, other comments that people have already made about certain things, and they can be their authentic selves and their, real and raw reactions to certain things, as opposed to them basically kind of filming this at the same time that we're watching it real time, so therefore they can kind of hold back certain things and not have to reveal or expose themselves as much, because now there's established fan favorites and people who they're rooting for and this and that, and then as a result of that, less tea gets spilled to us, and we are left trying to figure out, and pick up the pieces. So that was one thing that also bothered me. Also, I felt it was kind of an unfair treatment in the segments regarding, what took place with, Nick and his wife. They got to get a whole segment where they're doing home videos, kind of similar to what happened with Barnett last season, where they do like this whole, home video segment and everything else. But then I felt like with Ayanna and Jared, it was like they wanted to focus, of course, on the drama first, on the triangle stuff first. And then towards the end, they had a little segment like, hey, congrats that you two got married too. And it just felt like it was just like a big fluff, and I felt like they deserved a lot more, because in the end, I felt they were one of the more genuine couples, in spite of the Mallory drama, that they still found a way to make things work and get married and, be married for almost a year. So I felt that they had unfair segments in comparison. you know, to Nick and Danielle. So I didn't like that at all. Also, I felt that there is a lot of unresolved, you know, questions that could have been asked, follow-up questions between Shane and Natalie, lots of passive aggressiveness. I still don't know what happened other than the big fight that they had the night of their bachelor and bachelorette party, but we're still clueless. And the biggest question I have is about Shane and Shayna, because they're trying to downplay the hell out of that for whatever reason, and I need the tea. Because you're going to confirm that you guys saw each other alone at some point in time. You're okay to confirm that you met, but, you know, Shayna wanted to try to get in front of it like, oh, this had nothing to do to interfere with, you know, you and Natalie and this and that, and it was no big deal. And I just don't know if I buy that, because how hard Shayna liked Shane in the show, I refuse to believe that this was an innocent meetup. Something happened to where they don't want it out there, and I have an issue with that, because I'm like, if we're going to expose things at the reunion, we need to expose it. And this is why, you know, no shade to Nick and you know, Vanessa Lachey, but this is why I wanted different hosts for this show, because certain hosts know how to get certain things out of people. And when you are trying to say to certain people, oh, if you're not comfortable saying this, or you don't have to say this, and it's a reunion show where you're supposed to say this, where we're supposed to be getting the tea, it ruins the fan experience. Because we're left with more questions than answers. Just like, you know, Kyle saying that, you know, he should have married Deep, and that they had an amazing connection, and that he made the wrong move, and how he's in love with her and everything else, but we didn't get any follow-up questions. Is he in love with her because America loves her and is pissed at Shake? Or does he genuinely have real feelings for her, and they're dating on the low, or they tried to pursue things, or he asked her out, or he was using this platform to do so? There was no follow-up. We had no context of anything other than Shake being shady, saying, hey, I can facilitate something between the two of you if you would like, as if he still has ownership over Deep. And then Shake alluded onto his social media, posted some text message about possibly Kyle revealing him and Deep's relationship status at the reunion. So now I'm like, okay, are they secretly dating? Like, what's happening? And this is what I mean with how disjointed this reunion was, because they went harder in the paint in terms of the whole Jessica and Mark situation in season 1 compared to how they were treating Shayna with kid gloves this season, when I felt she caused a lot of drama for the little time that she got on the show, and it was completely glossed over, as if she was almost a producer plant to specifically stay, knowing that she didn't like Kyle, but trying to see if she can cause friction between Natalie and Shane, and then, you know, whatever is going to happen with that, she can wash her hands of it, her work is done, and she no longer has to film any future scenes and still gets a check, is what the vibe was giving me. And then I didn't understand how Shayna and Deep were so close. And then, you know, Shake posts after the fact on his social media, him, you know, picking up Shayna, who his preference is blondes, picking her up, you know, and having her legs wrapped around his head. And I'm like, what is going on? Weren't you just all cuddled up with Deep at the reunion? Like, this seems very shady. So it's like, it's giving me fake in some capacity with certain people. And I felt also it was a missed opportunity for us to have an update on the singles. Are any of the singles dating anybody now? You know, do any of them want to, you know, possibly reignite anything, you know, now that they've seen everything play back? Like, I felt there was just so many opportunities that were missed for follow-up questions. And it just seemed very disjointed. It seemed very unorganized. And it was just a lot. Like, Shake shouldn't have been controlling the reunion show. You know, Nick and Vanessa should have nipped that in the bud the first time that it happened. And it completely derailed, you know, the format and where they were supposed to go with certain questions and the order of questions and the order of couples and scenarios they were talking about. And so as a viewer, it was really frustrating. Like, I was happy, of course, for the couples that worked out. I was happy. One thing I love the most about Ayanna, and she hit the nail on the head, which is why I go so hard in the paint on these other dating reality shows. And the question was about the inappropriate conversation that went on for way too long between Mallory and Jarrett in Mexico and everything else. And what Ayanna's reaction to that was, because she said she didn't see it for the first time with Jarrett, and she was hurt. It was uncomfortable to watch. She felt a certain type of way, but she said something eloquently that other females need to take heed to. In these love triangle situations, and even in real life cheating situations, why do we make the other woman the only villain or the only issue, when in some of the time they are unknowingly dealing with these things, right? There's a difference between a woman who's knowingly getting involved with somebody who is unavailable, whether they're married or in a relationship, versus somebody who knowingly is doing this and, you know, trying to cause havoc and trying to cause drama. But these shows on purpose always have a love triangle incorporated in some capacity. There is always a triangle on these dating shows. And what happens? The women are pinned against each other and the men get off scot-free. Whether it's because of his looks or his charisma or his charm or whatever it is. And it is so annoying. And I was so happy Ayanna said, it is not about Mallory. It is about the fact that Jarrett disrespected me and disrespected us and what we were trying to do. And I needed to hold my man accountable because he's not about to act up like this, you know, or we're not, or it's going to be a wrap for us. And that, you know, Mallory owes her nothing. But I still feel Mallory owed her some decency because she was engaged to somebody else too. So in that regard, Mallory was inappropriate and did owe Ayanna a huge apology for her actions. So I disagreed with that piece of it, but I did agree with Ayanna in that she needs to hold her man accountable. And too often and not, social media, you know, from what we see on these reality shows, they like to choose a side between the women and not hold the men accountable. And not hold the men accountable for being messy and, you know, saying inappropriate things to multiple women and trying to paint a certain narrative, you know, that he's all about one woman, but then he's being inappropriate or having inappropriate conversations or inappropriate flirting, touching whatever on these dating shows with somebody else. But the other woman gets attacked and shamed for it, and not the man. The man goes unscathed. And this is why men continue to cheat, by the way. Because some people are never that upset with the male. They're always putting their focus on the female and not the male who did the cheating. So therefore, in his mind, he's like, oh, I kind of got off this scot-free. I didn't really get the blowback compared to the other woman did, so I can do this again at some point once this blows over. And that's the mentality, and that's why men continue to do, you know, certain men that act that way continue to do, you know, that type of behavior and display that type of behavior. So kudos to Ayanna for, you know, calling that out, and kudos to Jarrett for actually apologizing. Because I wasn't sure where this was going. But I was glad that he apologized. I was glad also that him and Sal had a conversation man to man. Because basically Jarrett diminished it on the show. Tried to downplay it like it was a joke. It wasn't a serious conversation and this and that. And obviously it was a lot more serious than what they were making it out to be. Because how are you talking about intimate details of your pod conversations while you guys are in a whole nother engagement honeymoon with other people? It was completely out of bounds. It was completely inappropriate, and it shouldn't have been no more than, hi, it's nice to meet you from the pods, and match a face with a name, and then go back to your fiance. There should have been no extensive conversation about how somebody looks and your little nicknames for each other, Jer Bear and Mal Mal, and talking about how you asked her what type of ring she wanted, basically implying that you intended to propose to her over Ayanna in the first place. All of that should have never taken place, ever. So it had to be called out, because they were both in the wrong for that. So I am glad that at least they, manned up and apologized, and Mal womaned up and apologized for her role as well, because that wasn't okay. But again, I just leave with more questions than answers. I felt the only time really Vanessa and Nick really got into it was when they went after Shake. Other than that, I felt like other people were just treated with kid gloves, and I just wasn't here for it. Like, I felt like Shane really got a pass, like got a huge pass, for how he did Natalie. And that's not even being discussed. So it's just very interesting, how this reunion episode kind of just skewed some things for me. Because like I said, I feel like there is more tea that needs to be spilled. I feel like I don't have proper context of certain things to give a full out review, a full out opinion on certain things, because of the lack of follow-up questions, because of the lack of information I received, and pretty much allowing Shake to dictate the reunion with his comments. Because he had already had in his mind he was going to be in villain mode, so he was going to do him. But, it really just turned into a point where the only time the cast really wanted to speak up was when it was to call out Shake and call out his behavior and this and that, which is, understandably so. Don't mind that, but can we get to the real questions about each of the people who were on the stage and not glossing over a lot of things? How has things changed in the marriage between Ayanna and Jared? I felt like that was glossed over too. In terms of, asking first versus doing later. Like, there's just follow-up questions that should have been asked that weren't. And, so that's why I felt like a certain way. I mean, overall, I'm glad the season is over. And also, it's funny that Nick and Vanessa wanted to use this opportunity to plug another spinoff show. Like, this is what I mean. This is what I mean with how disjointed everything was. Not only did we have to sit through this reunion, but they wanted to use this opportunity to plug another spinoff show that basically looks like the Netflix version of Temptation Island. That's coming out, I believe, in April. So I think it might compete with actually Temptation Island, because I believe Temptation Island is coming back this month, or the end of this month. But again, that segment could have been used for additional questions to ask the cast that was on the stage. So it's just very wild. And then certain people that were panned to when they were playing back certain clips, like Deep had made a comment to somebody while they were playing back the clip when Shake was talking to the different women, if they worked out and this and that. And these were other singles that we had saw. Because remember, there were plus size women that were casted as well, that we saw that first episode and then we never saw them again. So we have no clue if they met anybody, if they got engaged or anything. And then we also were done a disservice because there were also two other couples that got engaged. I think they both ended up breaking up eventually, but essentially the rumor was they didn't want to feature them because they went with the other cast members and they wanted to also incorporate more diversity as well. But at the same token, if these were better connections, why didn't you just have everybody that got engaged? We would have had more episodes. We would have had more couples to be invested in, instead of the train wreck that ended this season where pretty much mostly everybody is over each other. Because a lot of these couples did not work out in any capacity. And I felt a lot of them held back at this reunion because they didn't have hosts to really go in and get to the right questions and get to the right follow-up questions, and showing Shayna's blurred eyes for a million times throughout the episode. So one of the producers must love Shayna, because she got one hell of a headache at night for not saying anything. And just, doing the blurry lines, like, every 2 seconds. Like, are you asking me a question? Do I really need to answer this question? How can I get out of this question without looking like a jerk? And blah, 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 blah. That's what it felt like to me. So I am curious to know what you guys think. What did you guys think of this reunion? Do you guys feel that you have all your questions answered? And then on top of that, I believe it's Natalie and Deep or somebody, or Natalie and Shayna, somebody, they are going on a podcast Tuesday to reveal more secrets and spill more tea. And I'm going to feel a certain way if more tea comes out on that podcast than what they aired or even said for this reunion special, because it is an insult to the fans who know that there is more to these stories than what we were told. So it's just wild. It is just absolutely wild. And then the other thing that I felt was disproportionate is they really glossed over the issues that Danielle and Nick had, but spent a lot more time, just on the triangle focus of Ayanna, Jarrett, well, really the quad, the square, the trapezoid, whatever you want to call it, of Jared, Ayanna, Mel, and Sal, versus what some actual issues were heading into the marriage, which was Jared had some issues about, Ayanna's financial contribution, and Ayanna had some issues in terms of Jarrett going out all the time. Like, I felt like the actual issues, the core issues these couples had that we got invested in for 10 episodes were completely missed at the reunion, and everything was a big gloss over except for the shake stuff. So that is where I am on that. One other thing, final thing too, that I also enjoyed, actually a couple things, was when Ayanna was asked about, her and Jarrett being sexually active, and if it was true that they really, waited until their wedding night to have sex. And immediately by their reaction, their body language, I already knew. But I already knew in Mexico that they had smashed, because you could tell by their reaction. Their body language was like, yeah, you guys definitely took a test drive. You guys definitely hooked up, but we'll keep it cute. We'll keep it mute. And you can reveal to us or not at a later date. They definitely did something sexual at the minimum, the way that they were acting on that honeymoon. And you couldn't have told me otherwise. And I should have said this in an earlier video, because I clocked it. I was like, when they woke up, I think it was like the next day from, the first night that they were in Mexico or whatever, I was like, these vibes are like, we just smashed. So Jared is saying that they only had sex once, allegedly, but I mean, who cares at this point? They've been married for almost a year. It is what it is, but it was just hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious. And then there was like weird talk about Nick and Danielle's sex life and how whether or not they were breaking tables and breaking islands and stuff. And Shane wanted to get into that conversation. And I'm like, OMG, OMG. And then Vanessa kept hyping herself up in this episode about how Nick is her man and she's going to stick beside him. And I'm like, girl, weren't you at one point checking him out when he was with Jessica Simpson? Like, let's not rewrite the history, girl. Let's not rewrite the history on, how you were also making sure that you were always around too back at that time. Like, there is a little bit of messiness that's there. And her, declaring to be proud to be the second wife of Nick Lachey. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, who says stuff like that? Why aren't you just the proud wife of Nick Lachey, not the proud second wife? Like, what does that mean? Are you giving props to Jessica Simpson? Who says stuff like that? I'm proud to be the second or third or fourth wife to so-and-so. No, 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 no. You need to be proud that you're married to them and you're proud that you're their wife. Why are you putting a label on it to still give credence and emphasis to wife number one? Like, it was just a very weird thing. I think, Vanessa thought she was throwing shade to Jessica Simpson, but it low-key was her throwing shade to herself. And then Shake making it a point to say that everybody is beautiful, but he was only attracted to Vanessa out of everybody that's there. Like, it was just, he just kept shooting himself in the foot. But I think, honestly, he didn't care. He already knew he was a villain, so he was going to go out with a bang. This was his last opportunity, to be in front of the world and continue to be a jerk. And he embraced it. He completely embraced it. And I will say, although he's a jerk, he wasn't completely wrong with some of the things that he was saying. Because that's how terrible the hosts were. The hosts had opportunities to really get to the nitty gritty, but when you treat people with kid gloves, when you say, oh, you don't have to say anything, and this is a reunion when we're used to reality TV reunions, like on Housewives, like on some of these other shows, like Big Brother, like Survivor, and The Bachelor, After the Rose, like when Married at First Sight reunion, we like to get to the nitty gritty. And we didn't get any of that. So I just left with more questions than answers. And I feel like I'm going to have to do a follow-up video based off of what additional tea is revealed that did not come out on this episode. So that is all that I have for real this time. Please let me know your guys' thoughts. Please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you're notified the moment I post new content on my channel. And with that being said, I will talk to you guys again very soon.